This film demonstrates some applications to data analysis of recent developments in computer graphics technology. It is filmed in real time on the Orion I Workstation. Orion I is a computer graphics system built at the Stanford Linear Accelerator Center in 1981. In this film, we show some ways in which a system like Orion I can be used to analyze multivariate data. What we do here is just look at data. We want to see and understand as much as possible about the shape of the data set in the many-dimensional data space. Orion I provides us with tools that help us to discover and interpret structure in multivariate data. This is an intentionally vague goal because what we mean by structure is any subjectively perceived pattern in data. A system like Orion I makes it possible to handle unanticipated kinds of structure in an intelligent way. The system combines a flexible color raster graphics display with a powerful computer. The computing power of our system is approximately half that of an IBM 370-168 mainframe. However, the system is relatively inexpensive. The total price of the hardware in 1981 was less than $60,000. What does this technology mean to a statistician? The concentration of computing power devoted to a single user means that demanding computations can be done with immediate response. The addition of a flexible graphics device allows the results of computation to be displayed as a picture. With the addition of an appropriate input device, in our case a tracker ball, this system allows a statistician to observe and act on data in unprecedented ways. We demonstrate Orion I by showing highlights of a session with actual data. We will look at the Harrison-Rubenfeld housing price data, which was assembled in a study of the dependence of housing value on air pollution. The data set consists of 14 variables measured for each of 506 census tracts in the Boston metropolitan area. We will be concentrating on 6 of the variables. Variable 1 is the median value in each census tract of owner-occupied homes. It is intended as a measure of housing prices. Variable 2 is the per capita crime rate in each census tract. Variable 3 is the proportion of residential land that is zoned to be more than 25,000 square feet. It is measured by town rather than by census tract. Variable 4 is the average number of rooms per house in the census tract. Variable 5 is the proportion of the population in the census tract that is lower status. Status is measured that combines income and education level. Variable 6 is the weighted sum of distances from the tract to 5 employment centers in the Boston area. It is basically a measure of commuting distance. One of the most striking functions in this kind of graphic system is the ability to use motion to show three-dimensional scatter plots. In this particular three-dimensional scatter plot, we see variable 1, housing price, variable 2, crime rate, and variable 3, percentage of lots zoned for more than 25,000 square feet. tell which directions in the scatter plot correspond to which of the three variables by looking at the coordinate axes in the upper right corner of the screen. In this view, the data set shows a striking kind of shape. The points lie in two perpendicular planes. The points on the left side of the screen have essentially zero values of the big lots variable and range from 0 to very high values of crime rate. The points on the right side of the screen have 0 values of crime rate and positive values of the big lots variable. The points with high crime rate tend to have lower housing values than the points with high big lots. There are a few peculiar observations now at the top of the screen that have 0 values of big lots, non-zero values of crime rate, but much higher housing value than other observations with similar values of crime rate and big lots. There is an obvious interpretation for this structure. The tracts with 0 crime and high big lots are in the suburbs. High crime and 0 big lots are urban tracts. We check this interpretation by labeling observations on the screen. Tract 306 is in Milton. Tract 333 is in Holbrook. 203 is Wayland. Tracts 414, 411 are downtown South Bay. Tract 401 is South Boston. Tract 410 is downtown South Bay. Tracts 372, 373 are in Beacon Hill. 369 is in Back Bay. Beacon Hill and Back Bay are fashionable and expensive neighborhoods in downtown Boston. There seem to be 3 populations in this view: the suburbs, the bulk of the city, and a few tracts which are distinct from the rest of the city. We summarize this apparent structure by creating a discrete variable that records which of the 3 groups each observation belongs to. The value of the discrete variable determines the color of the point representing each observation. We construct a discrete variable or grouping by defining rectangular regions on the screen and then moving all points in the rectangular region into one of the 7 groups. We put the suburban tracts into group number 1.4, which is represented by the color yellow. Next, we color the Beacon Hill Back Bay tracts red. With 14 variables in the data set, there are 14 choose 3, or 364 3-variable scatter plots. An interesting set of 3 new variables to compare to 1, 2, and 3 are the variables 4, 5, and 6. Recall that variable 4 is the average number of rooms per house, variable 5 is the proportion of the population that is lower status, and variable 6 is a weighted sum of distances to 5 employment centers in the Boston area. In this view, most of the points seem to lie close to a bent and twisted surface which is roughly triangular in outline. The blue urban tracts dominate a corner of the triangle that has high values of percent poor, variable 5, and low values of variables 4 and 6, average number of rooms and distance. The yellow suburban tracts dominate a corner that has high values of distance, moderate values of average number of rooms, and a low value of percent poor. The third corner contains a mix of the 3 groups. It corresponds to high values of average number of rooms, low values of percent poor and distance. The really challenging problem in the analysis of many-dimensional data is to see and understand structure involving more than 3 variables at once. One way to see relationships among many variables at once is the following. Look at 2 low-dimensional views of the data simultaneously and connect the contents of each view in some way. The scatter plot on the left is the same as our first view of the data. You recall that it shows variable 1, housing price, variable 2, crime rate, and variable 3, percentage of area zoned for large lots. The right view is our second. It shows variable 4, the average number of rooms per house, variable 5, the proportion of the population that is lower status, and variable 6, a weighted sum of distances to 5 employment centers in the Boston area. To see relationships between the variables 1, 2, 3 and variables 4, 5, 6, we connect pairs of points, one from each scatter plot corresponding to the same observation. One way of connecting pairs of corresponding points is by drawing them in the same color. Notice the cursor in the left plot. Points near the cursor are red. Points at an intermediate distance are purple. Points far from the cursor are blue. The corresponding points in the other plot take on the same color. The colors change as we move the cursor. As we move the cursor back and forth between low and high values of variable 1, housing price, we see how these regions in the left scatter plot map into the right scatter plot. The high crime, low housing value tracts correspond to the high percent poor corner of the triangle. Moderately priced, low crime tracts map into the high distance corner. The most expensive tracts map into the high average number of rooms corner. We can also see what each of the 3 groups, suburbs, city, and Beacon Hill Back Bay, correspond to in the other view. The result is similar to what we saw through grouping. We have been looking at some aspects of the six-dimensional space spanned by the two three-dimensional views. Of course, we can look at more than two views at a time. With 4 views, we can see 12 dimensions. In the lower left-hand view, we have variable A, an index of access to radial highways, variable B, property tax rate, and variable C, pupil-teacher ratio. In this view, there are 2 clear outliers. The farther outlier corresponds to most, but not all, of the urban tracts. This point represents the city of Boston. The 3 variables, A, B, and C, are measured by town, so a single point represents many census tracts. Since Boston seems different from the other urban tracts, we make the Boston tract a new group, marked with the color magenta. What we have done in the preceding 20 minutes is a form of interactive clustering. That is, we have partitioned the data set into groups with the idea that observations in the same group are similar and observations in different groups are dissimilar. There are many automatic algorithms to do such clustering. Most clustering algorithms are based on some notion of distance. These methods try to form groups such that points within a group are close together and far from points in any other group. In other words, clustering algorithms try to break up